there have been 7 essential virtues that Hindus have been encouraged to practice, right? So there's ahimsa, non-violence. There's satyam shivam sundaram, truth and piety, and the cultivation and appreciation of beauty is a Hindu virtue. There's vairagyam, or detachment. There is pavitra, or purity, and there is at the end svabhavam, or self-control. If you don't have self-control, then all these other virtues ultimately can simply go awry. And the importance, essentially, of pursuing the fourfold path, pursuing this, but with certain virtues that you are supposed to uphold and which are part of the better life. I mean, ultimately, these are very, very profoundly thought through ideas in Hindu philosophy over millennia. And I accept Deendayal Upadhyay's rights to try and apply them to the politics of India. Where I part company from his thinking and from that of others of the Hindutva ideology is in the fact that whereas I believe Hinduism is a religion and a philosophy that embraces, their Hindutva is an ideology that excludes. And to my mind, that is what is fundamentally wrong. If you say that somehow by being a Muslim or a Christian, you are excluded from all these virtues that Hindus are entitled to by virtue of being born on the soil of India, there's something fundamentally wrong with that. It's also fundamentally at odds with our constitution, which is one of the reasons why I'm mildly surprised that those of that persuasion now ruling us celebrate our constitution so enthusiastically, when in fact their ideological forebears have denounced it from the very beginning of its drafting and its adoption. Hinduism, by definition, has so many sacred texts. We're not a religion of the book, as the Muslims speak about. We are a religion of multiple books. And ultimately, you're welcome to choose from them your own personal Hinduism. That's again one of the great things about the faith. Adi Shankara, about 1080, 980, thereabouts, so roughly about 2400 years after the Rig Veda was composed, he himself said, there are too many texts, I'm going to focus on a few specific, the Bhagavad Gita, a few Upanishads, not all of them, and try and do my interpretations of the faith on the basis of the doctrines propounded in these texts that I've chosen. And that's 1,000 years ago. So since the 1,000 years thereafter, we have a lot more human experience through which to filter our appreciation of our text. The Manusmriti is grossly patriarchal and grossly casteist. And on both those grounds, it is entirely appropriate for us to say we don't think its prohibitions or its prescriptions are valid anymore for us. That is, I think, a very logical thing for a Hindu to say today. And so when Ambedkar rejected the Manusmriti, I have no problem with that. But when I wrote Why the Hindu, the pushback I got from some people, especially who are Dalits and others of so-called lower castes, was precisely that I did not pay enough attention to their experiences, and I admitted that my book was an understanding and an explanation of Hindu philosophy, Hindu spirituality, Hindu values, the value system of Hinduism, but not sufficiently about Hinduism in society. And writing my short biography of Ambedkar was actually also an act of expiation. It was a way of saying that though perhaps, in talking about Hinduism, I've not paid enough attention to the actual experience of what some people have suffered in the name of Hinduism, I'll do so now. And I remain a great admirer of Ambedkar's intellect. He and Nehru, in very different ways, were two of the greatest intellects of the 20th century in any civilization that I'm aware of. Just extraordinarily fine minds. And so when Ambedkar wrote what he wrote about Hinduism, and indeed, as you know, he left Hinduism at the end. It so happened that he died a few months after he had converted to Buddhism. But when he chose Buddhism, it was still an offshoot of Hinduism, as we see it in India, even though he had been wooed extensively by both Muslims and Christians to join their faith, and even by Sikhs. But he felt that Buddhism was the closest and the most compatible with his beliefs. But yes, he wanted to annihilate caste. And we have ended up somehow perversely entrenching caste all the more, rather than annihilating it. So it is there, it is now, as a sociologist, Dipankar Gupta wrote, what we have done now is we have taken caste and represented it, rather than eliminated it. And that's what we are now looking at